What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So in less than 2 weeks now, the Zelda anniversary will officially be here. February 21st, 1986, when the original Zelda game came out on the Famicom. Well, the hype is at an all-time high as a pamphlet started making the rounds online, giving a bit more insight maybe into what's going on with Breath of the Wild 2. There was just one issue with that pamphlet, and we'll talk about all of that here today. Also, Halo Master Chief Collection. Could it be going to another platform, a new place to play? Well, that's what they're saying in their latest update. And it looks like Nintendo decided to talk a bit more about what they're going to do with the family of systems for the Switch, and even some of their plans for how they can overtake the Wii and have the Switch become the best-selling home console ever for Nintendo. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake. We originally talked about this one when it showed up. The character models didn't look great. It got delayed a couple of months into March, I believe. Well, now here we are where it has been delayed indefinitely. They put this tweet out here on Twitter where they say, since announcing Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake in September, we saw an outpouring of feedback from you on this beloved franchise. It is your passion and support that is driving our development teams to make the best game possible. With that said, we have made the decision to shift the release for Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake to a later date. This extra development time will enable our teams to deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. Now, when they originally announced that delay of like 2 months, it was supposed to come out in January, then they pushed it to March, and now it's just indefinitely. There's no release date that they're putting out there currently, and that's probably the best way to go about it, since if you look at it, they really have to change some things around, specifically with the character models. That's the biggest thing everyone seemed to point out. The environments, I think, were fine. It's just the jarring look of the characters is what we'll say. And I would like this game to do well, because it'd be cool if they try to do a remake for Warrior Within and then Two Thrones and all of this. So yeah, I say take your time, get it right. And if we have to wait all the way until the holidays of 2021, that's fine. Also, Control Ultimate Edition is out on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and it looks really good for a technical showcase for ray tracing and all this. It's pretty neat to go through, and it's on PlayStation Plus. But people did notice something very interesting, and that comes down to the file size between the PS5 version and the Xbox Series X version. It's actually quite a bit smaller on the PS5. We can head over here to Tweaktown, where they say Control Ultimate Edition is one of the first games to flex the PS5's new Kraken compression tech. The game clocks in just 25 gigabytes on PS5 with 4K resolution textures and PS5 optimizations intact, a 42% reduction from the Series X and S file size of 42 gigabytes. This isn't a big reduction from the PS4 version, though, which only clocks in at 24 gigabytes. But that's still pretty impressive, and I think a welcomed thing to see going into this generation coming up, where we were expecting to hear about 100 some odd gigabyte file sizes becoming the norm. I am glad that compression at least has some focus right now, especially on the PS5 side, where we have that 825 gigabyte SSD that really you get 660 gigabytes of. Although I guess Microsoft is dealing with that Series S on the other side. But still, I am happy to see that we are getting some details around the idea of these file sizes getting smaller. I'd like to see what one of the first-party games from Sony could do. Could they get could they get Gran Turismo under 50 gigabytes, which would be pretty impressive for a game that has a ton of high-resolution textures and all of this for the cars? I guess we'll see. Oh, and here's something that's been kind of flying under the radar. That has to do with Assassin's Creed Valhalla and really the live services aspect of Ubisoft and just really the games industry in general. A lot of times a game will come out and then people will forget about it, and that company will do a lot of things to add to a microtransaction shop. They did it with Valhalla with an experience booster, and now they appear to be doing it with quite a few pieces of armor ahead of some of the promised DLC that they put out there prior to launch. We can see this Reddit post here that blew up online quite a bit, especially over this past couple of days. There are now 9 armor sets in the microtransaction store, just as many as the entire base game. Are we just going to let this slide? This from Zuazur? And they go through all of this, but really it comes down to Ubisoft really seeming to focus more or less on adding things that are locked behind microtransactions now, to the point where it's the same amount of armor sets in that microtransaction shop compared to what's available in the game. Now, there are still some variations of armor types from what I've seen that are in the base game. So technically it's more in the base game, but it's very, very similar. And it's not a great look there, but because of the way the gaming industry moves is very, very fast with all of the news, these kind of things kind of just sit off on the sideline and will build up. It's something we've talked about a lot with these live service games, and certainly something to keep an eye on. So hopefully Ubisoft can, start delivering some of the DLC to that game that they promised a little while ago. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're starting right away with the Halo Master Chief Collection. It is an awesome collection of all of the different Halo games. Terrible when it first launched, has become significantly better now, and they continue to do a lot of updates around this. It has essentially turned into a live services type game, but it's done very, very well. Now, they have been talking about different updates and some of their flight tests they do, which are basically beta tests for new features, essentially, but they keep the community updated very, very well. And this latest one caught a lot of people by surprise a bit with one line of text. Let's head over here. This was an update posted on February 5th, and we can see a couple of things here. It's like, okay, flighting future. We got field of view slider support for all the Xbox One consoles. That's great. Some for the Series S and the X devices set to 120 hertz. We have additional ways to customize controls, key bindings, mouse and keyboard support for consoles. That's actually really cool, right? See, they do a lot here for this collection. And then maybe a new place and way to play. That was kind of it. Like, they just sort of said that and then moved on very quickly for some of these flighting features and just didn't really mention anything else with that, didn't elaborate on it, which of course led to a lot of speculation. It's a new place to play. Could that mean the Switch? Because Halo has been speculated on and even teased as something that could head to the Switch. And I will say this, I'm not going to rule out the Switch 100% as a place that Halo could go, but I think that is very much reliant on the idea of xCloud going to the Switch. As in, I think Master Chief Collection would only exist on the Switch if it was being played through xCloud. The file size for Master Chief Collection, by the way, out of control. Like, that would be something that would be, I think, very difficult to make work on the Switch as it currently is. So looking at this, no, I don't think they would tease a Switch release just randomly all the way at the bottom of this update in some flighting edition and news. No, what I would have to say here, looking at this, I think there's two likelihoods of this whole thing. I think the biggest one is probably them launching on iPhone and this being a new place to play. I mean, if you really look at it, the install size of iPhones is massive. Microsoft has done a lot to try to make it work with xCloud now to the point where it like side loads a browser for that to work. The other thing could be streaming to browser on PC. I think that is the most likely of things that they are talking about here, coming down to xCloud and new places to access it. I also thought it would have been cool if maybe they're referencing like a smart TV, maybe xCloud, which they have to be looking at that too. They've made references to that, and who knows, maybe they partner with Samsung, much like they've partnered with Samsung for their phones to have xCloud app just pre-installed. You buy a new Samsung TV in 2021 and xCloud is already there. They'd be very smart to even package an Xbox controller in so you don't have to go through all of the work of buying an Xbox controller. Basically make it as pick up and play and as out of the box as possible. Now, the other fun thing that would be really cool if Microsoft's like, you know what, yeah, whatever, we'll do this, is if they put it in the new Tesla. we just talked about the new Tesla. Elon Musk mentioned in a tweet that the one console game he's played has been Halo. That's the correct answer, by the way. So why not do a little matchup there and drop Halo into the newest Tesla Model S. But no, I don't think this has anything to do with the Switch. I think it's more or less them talking about launching xCloud somewhere else like the iPhone, which means that yes, the Halo Master Chief Collection would follow and maybe need some optimization around screen sizes for the different iPhones, just as an example. Next up, let's talk about Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. The Zelda anniversary, like I said, 2 weeks away officially when the original Zelda turns 35, but we're all looking towards the holiday here. We assume it's going to be a pretty good year for the Legend of Zelda franchise, and we'd like to see it capped off either at the end of this coming up fiscal year, which would be at the end of next March for 2022, or maybe this holiday to have Breath of the Wild 2 come out. So yes, any news for Breath of the Wild 2 right now is like super hot when it comes to gaming news and interest currently, but an image of a pamphlet started to go around and it actually shot to the top of N4G. It was all over different forums because it looked like it gave a bit more information into what was happening with Breath of the Wild 2, which is still a massive question, by the way, is what is going to happen in this game and what's the overall premise and idea, and what did we see with Link and Zelda in the basement with Ganon and all of these things, right? Well, let's take a look at this here. This is from the pamphlet that started to go around. It says, deep within the caverns beneath Hyrule Castle, a new and powerful threat awakens. Can our courageous heroes save the kingdom again? And basically, everyone looked at this and said, oh, okay, so they were in the caverns beneath Hyrule Castle during that trailer. Okay, that makes sense. And that's seriously the information from what I saw that was going around that started up a ton of hype around Breath of the Wild 2. And I guess just a bit more about the game and what we're looking at. Except there's one problem. It was all zoomed in on that pamphlet, so everyone figures maybe it was something from Nintendo. No, it looks like it was from E3 one year, and it was from Games Radar. So this is a tweet from Zeltic that people managed to pull up, and you can see the pamphlet here. I mean, this is the entire thing. It's Games Radar Ultimate Guide to Nintendo. This was from November 21st, 2019. It's just a guide to Nintendo, and in there, I guess they speculated on the idea of what we saw in the trailer, which a lot of us assumed, as they said, deep within the caverns beneath Hyrule Castle. There's really nothing in this pamphlet that we just read that is, like, I think mind-blowing to a lot of people that they didn't already assume was going on there. But like I said, that's the level of hype we are right now for Breath of the Wild 2, with good reason. We're coming off of a game that some people say is the best game ever made, right? I still think Link to the Past is the best Zelda game, but look, I see Breath of the Wild, I understand. It is a phenomenal game. So naturally, hearing about the sequel and trying to imagine what it could be and trying to grab any little bit of information, yes, it can pull you in. But no, nothing yet on Breath of the Wild 2 that would be from Nintendo. That's just from Games Radar. So if you see that pamphlet going around, nothing to really grab onto there just yet, or at least nothing we haven't figured at this time. But I mean, 2 weeks, we'll at least have a date that should be set up really well for some sort of reveal. You know what? If I was Nintendo, that's when I would drop a trailer for Breath of the Wild 2. I think it would work out really well. Next up, let's talk about a patent that WB Games has finally been able to push through, and it's a bit concerning, I think, for the gaming industry overall. Now, patents around systems in games isn't necessarily a new thing, and I'm actually going to talk about one here with you guys that some of you may not have been aware that was patented way back in the day, and I guess is still in effect now, actually, not I'm thinking about it, but WB patented their Nemesis system. This is from Shadow of Mordor. Do you remember when you were playing the game and you were fighting a general, maybe they got away, but they would remember you and you'd see them again, and like, let's say you slashed them in the face and took out one of their eyes or something, they'd have an eye patch on. Or maybe you did take them out, well, someone else would come in and take their place and all this, and it would basically kind of evolve around the actions that you did, whether letting some get away or taking them out, and it was pretty cool. It's a very interesting system, I thought, but the fact that it's now had a patent claimed on it is concerning, we'll say, for the gaming industry. We can go over here, this is from IGN that does explain it a bit further. The patent filed as Nemesis characters, Nemesis forts, social vendettas, and followers in computer games effectively codifies the functions of Monolith's Nemesis system and the sum of its part as the property of WB. While the language in the application is fairly obtuse, as most patent claims tend to be, the short version is that the patent covers a system featuring procedurally generated NPCs that exist in a hierarchy and interact with and will remember the actions of the players, have their appearance, behavior altered by players, and whose place in that hierarchy can change and affect the position of other NPCs in said hierarchy. It also covers the social conquest battles from Shadow of War, wherein players can fortify or attack one another's strongholds to see how their army of orcs fares against their friends. You can see some of the figures here, and the biggest issue with this is when this kind of thing is patented, there is a concern. If you're a smaller indie developer who has an idea similar to Nemesis system, but it's not like the exact same thing, you start to wonder, wait a minute, is this too similar? Is this part here that's centered around the enemy remembering the player, or maybe teaming up, or maybe you're taking your army against another stronghold or something? Does any of this fit up against the Nemesis system? And could I open myself up to being sued? Because indie developers, while they are, I would say, the big creative force driving the industry along, they don't exactly have the capital to find out. Now, as I mentioned, this is not the first time we've seen a patent basically claimed and applied to a mechanic in a game. Let me read this one to you, actually, and see if you can figure out, as I'm going through it, what it exactly means. This is game display method, moving direction indicating method, game apparatus, and driving simulating apparatus. A game display method displays a driving game which permits characters to be present in a city and can prevent cruel images of collisions with characters. Characters in a dangerous area are intentionally moved away from a motorbike. This is actually one from Sega. And what this entails is the arrow, specifically, over the crazy taxi car. Yeah, that is what this patent is supposed to protect. The little arrow when you would pick someone up and then drive them to another destination. They actually used that when they went after the Simpsons hit and run that had an arrow above their character when they were driving around. Yes, I double checked. That patent appears to still be in effect. Now, the one around the Nemesis system appears to be in effect until like 2035, I believe. So it's gonna be a little while, and that's if they continue to keep up fees. I guess they could even extend it beyond there. They've tried to get this Nemesis system patented for a little while now, multiple failed attempts, and it seemed to go through for some reason now. So I'm hoping this doesn't become a trend in games, because if everyone starts patenting everything all over the place, it's gonna be this big stalemate, and people are gonna wonder, okay, are you going to enforce that patent? Or are you gonna let us go ahead with our game? If our game becomes successful, are you all of a sudden then gonna change your mind and enforce the patent? It's not a great look for the gaming industry, and to be honest, it just hurts creativity all over. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some of the questions and answers that took place for the investors meeting that we had with that financial release from Nintendo just a few days ago. It's now been fully translated, so we don't have to rely on like Google Translate or something to really go through it and hope that the sentences and the words all make sense. So we can take a look. I wanted to go over two questions here. When asked about the 80 million cumulative sales currently for the Switch being within range of the 100 million recorded by the Wii, they asked going forward, what can the Nintendo Switch do to grow even further when it comes to sales? And Furukawa answered, Nintendo Switch has entered the middle of its life cycle and sales have greatly increased in the fourth year after the 2017 launch, reaching a wider range of consumers. We are aiming to continue this momentum and increase the cumulative sales volume to overtake that of Wii. While we are considering various measures to achieve this, one point that we consider critical to this effort is the fact that a wide range of consumers are currently playing Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch will be entering its fifth year, and it's important for us to continue to provide the next title of interest to each of these various consumers, and our research has found that approximately 20% of the Nintendo Switch family sell-through between October and December 2020 in the main regions was due to demand for multiple systems within the same family. We aim to continue increasing our sales volume by rigorously responding to this kind of demand for multiple systems as well. Starting with the subject of new Nintendo Switch models, we will be releasing Nintendo Switch Mario Red and Blue Edition as a set, including a carrying case and Nintendo Switch console with special Mario designs alongside the release of Super Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury, February 12th. We also plan to release a special design of the hardware as Nintendo Switch Monster Hunter Rise Edition in March. With this release schedule for new hardware and Nintendo Switch having just marked its highest sales in its fourth year on the market, we do not have plans to announce a new model. Moving into future expansion of the install base, we believe that as the number of Nintendo Switch users continues to grow, this will also drive increasing demand for a second system among the Nintendo Switch family of systems. That said, there are already many people in these regions who have purchased the hardware in these past 4 years, and so for sales to grow even further, we will need to communicate the appeal of Nintendo Switch as a video game system to people who have not yet bought one as a result of our past initiatives. So the family of system stuff does keep coming up, and Nintendo has not ruled out the idea of there being no revision for 2021. In fact, they're actually been pretty vague about that, whereas last year they were pretty straightforward. Nothing is coming for 2020, but now here we are in February, the beginning of February, where they are looking to the rest of this year, and yes, I think they're going to have another entry in the family of systems. Nintendo realizes, they're looking at the Wii right now, and they pointed out right here, hey, we're going to make a run at the Wii, and we're going to try to pass it, I think, by the end of this actual year, the end of 2021 going to the holiday, will probably come out the other end of that, and in February they'll be telling us about how they are at like 103 million Switch systems, something crazy, right? So I think a lot of that will depend on their ability to correctly launch a new revision of some kind. Now, I'm not saying it's gonna be like a big Switch Pro or something like that, but something else for us to buy all over again. And the way that they kind of are talking about the family of systems, and they're not ready to just write off the idea of revision completely like they did in 2020, tells me that they probably have something planned for this. But they are obviously looking at their software lineup, and that's really what sells systems. And I think Nintendo's gonna have a very good year when it comes to software as well. So if they can figure everything out, where they have some interesting new hardware this year and some great software, and they pair it together, yeah, we'll be talking about probably this time next year, the Switch is their best-selling home console to date. And who knows, the DS, it could happen. If they really can figure out these hardware revisions to where we will buy multiples of them, like what happened with the DS, which came in at a great time. It came in before cell phones and tablets really took off to where everyone had those. I mean, everyone had DSs then instead, right? So if they can do that and make it work with the Switch with hardware revisions and great software, I think they might have a shot at the DS even. But for now, they're going after the Wii, and I think that's a good move. And by the end of this year, like I said, I think it's going to happen. And before we move on to the comment of the day, let's take a look at the poll that I posted up on Friday, where I asked, will we have a large Nintendo Direct before June? 54% of you said yes. 46% of you said no. And you know, I thought about this. I said, hey, if I'd posted that poll like 2 years ago, I bet you probably 80% would say yes. That's kind of where we are with the Directs. I really do believe a lot of people are thinking right now, Nintendo's just done with them. But I'm kind of leaning towards there being some stuff coming up pretty soon. Like, I think we're gonna get the Pokemon stuff. That'll probably happen in the next, I'm gonna say like next week and a half to 2 weeks. There'll probably be some interesting things there. A full Pokemon Direct, I'm sure. But like, a Zelda Direct, maybe it's possible. However, a big Nintendo Direct, I am kind of leaning towards one not happening officially, maybe until that June time slot where we would normally have an E3 one. So that's kind of where we are now, though. It's interesting to see things really shift just over the last 2 years from where we were expecting a Direct every February, every January even, and now we don't even think we're gonna see one at all. Then we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Angry Tacos. That Akira Yamaoka interview has been made private by the channel. Hope it means something. I did see that. It was posted up on Twitter the next day after I put it in Newswave, and then like later on that day, people were mentioning that interview on the YouTube channel was down. And I thought about that. I said, I wonder if like Konami or Sony asked for it to be pulled, or who knows there. Maybe Akira asked for it to be pulled because he's like, oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. Now I'm thinking about it. Or I should have rephrased it a bit differently and didn't say, yeah, this summer Silent Hill is basically going to be shown. But yeah, that's down now. So a lot of people, yes, are thinking, well, we're probably going to see Silent Hill in a state of play this summer. In fact, I'm kind of expecting it, to be honest. So it's not a well-kept secret now, and I think fans are going to be really excited when they finally do see it. The one that I'm hoping ends up being real is Metal Gear Solid by Bluepoint, because that would be amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newsway. Enjoyed this video, guys. Hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's the Master Chief Collection going to a new platform. Do you think they maybe slipped up and accidentally referenced the Switch version? Because that's some of the speculation I saw. Or you think it's more like what I'm thinking, oh, it's gonna be a new place to play it through xCloud, like on an iPhone or maybe on the smart TV. Also, what do you think about Breath of the Wild 2 and just a little entry from a pamphlet just saying they're below Hyrule Castle, blowing up online? I mean, the hype around this Zelda stuff is real this year for the anniversary. And then what about WB having a patent now on the Nemesis system? Do you think it's bad for the games industry? Let me know about that down below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.